faces. It reminds me of the start of the Brady Bunch TV.
Well, let me introduce myself, and I'm just doing proper old recording this way because the recording button's not coming up.
At least you're not getting Polaroid.
So I'm Gracie, the founder of Men's Style Fashion, and thank you very much for your time. I'll start with you, Russell, and if you can just introduce yourself. And the same question to everyone. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, who am I? It's a different thing from what I do. I don't know if everybody recognises what I do, but yeah, I'm Russell Khan, design director of Lotus. So I'm responsible for all the aesthetic output on Lotus cars. So that's everything from the exterior, the interior, engine beautification, badges, all those sorts of things. So, and I've been at Lotus a long time, 30 years this June, actually.
Wow.
So I started off with lovely, luscious, long hair a long time ago.
So that means you're faster to work these days, right?
Yeah, but I'm carrying other stuff that doesn't make me so fast. Muscle.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I'm the PR guy. I've only been at Lotus for about a year. I'm just here to make sure Russell doesn't perjure himself. So I'll be on mute the whole time.
Oh, fantastic. And Scott, who are you and what do you do?
My name's Scott Howard. I do a number of things, one of which is collaborating with Gracie on this. I'm a car guy, a former 7 owner, and most recently an Evora S owner, which I now miss terribly, having left the Pyrenees where it remains.
And you're a big Lotus fan, aren't you, Scott?
Yeah, I thoroughly get it.
The T-shirt gives it away a bit there. I like it.
Okay.
I'm underdressed.
Thomas, we can't see you. Is there a reason for that?
Let me try. I don't know if my internet connection is good enough, and I have a hideous headset on. So.
Okay, Jimmy.
Partly planned.
Okay, Jimmy, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, my name's Jimmy Markham. I work with Gracie doing some car freelance writing and reviews and some test driving along the way.
Yeah, he does. And Thomas, good to see you. Thomas, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Thomas. Likewise with Jimmy, I collaborate a bit with Gracie on some car content, and I am a mechanical designer, and I currently work in Formula One.
Wow.
Got your attention? Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, I better be careful when I start talking technical, then I'll get caught up.
Scott, do you want to open up with, you've got some brilliant questions lined up, so I'll get you starting the ball rolling.
Well, so as someone who knows the brand quite well, and I wanted to just ask, how did the design brief come about? Because would I be right in saying that even though there's only going to be 130 produced of this wonderful electric hypercar, what was the origin, the starting point of saying let's produce an electric hypercar under the Lotus brand?
It was a really simple brief to start with, and maybe that's the success of the project. We just got a message from the chairman Lee, via our CEO. The chairman wanted to do a hypercar and wanted us to start sketching. And I can't remember if it was day one, but really early on, it became apparent that it was going to be an EV. And once that came on board, the opportunity was to do the most powerful, EV hypercar there's been to date. So, fantastic brief because it was completely open. Felt very Lotus because it was fresh and challenging. You'll appreciate that. I'm sitting here with some of my toys in front of me. You know, Lotus has been famous for many different things. And back in the 60s, Chapman even put a gas turbine engine out of a helicopter into the car. So I think our founder, Colin Chapman, would have appreciated the new technology of electric and wanted to exploit its potential. But for us working on the aesthetics side, of course, when you hear, it's a hypercar, you think all the shackles come off. You've got a chance to do something different in terms of budget, shapes, etc. And also because it's electric as well, maybe there's some new opportunities to do things slightly differently. So that's where it started, and then we get into the phase which is sketches and models and things like that.
So when we were discussing before, because it goes, whereas you're about lightness, adding lightness, possibly at the expense of out and out the horsepower arms race, the requirement to get so much downforce, as the designer, did that compromise your ability? Were you constrained by the wind tunnel, or liberated by the wind tunnel and downforce requirements for something so quick?
I think well, two things. One is that the weight thing. We obviously keep that in mind all the time, and you always think we'll do the most weight efficient car that we can. So it may not be the lightest car anymore. It may not be 500-600 kilos or whatever, but you can always make sure that yours is the lightest EV hypercar, and that's the edge you give and makes it a Lotus, because weight is everything in terms of acceleration, turning the car, braking the car. I'm slowly going to get out of my depth with Mr. Formula One there, but all those things. But you know, we on the aesthetics, we have our part to play with that, certainly. In terms of the aerodynamic side of things, I think we worked hand in hand with the technical guys to help liberate ourselves. We'd done some projects that didn't go the full distance, where we'd started to look at creating air passageways through the car, because there are, and again, this is where I could get tripped up very quickly with Mr. Formula One there, or Mr. Race Car guy. But it liberates possibilities in reducing drag and creating downforce. And for us, it's an interesting sculptural opportunity. The idea that your eye can be drawn through the car as well as over the exterior surface. It immediately creates speed because your eye's being drawn through the form of the car. It creates different sculpture. One of your journalist colleagues very kindly, said our car looked like a Barbara Hepworth sculpture, and I wish we could pretend that we were that articulate in the art world to use that as a reference. But we'll take it afterwards. That wasn't the reason. But so we had this as an early thing, and I was really passionate about it, and I was constantly forcing the designers and the aerodynamicists, can we look at this? Can we look at this? And I think the first time I'd seen it was on one of the Peugeot LMP cars back in the early 2000s, and we did it. And we did a very quick scale model for design approval, and we took the data from that, and we did some CFD work, and it works immediately in principle. Your colleague will know that there's hours and hours of development, getting the balance right, optimizing the downforce, getting every last percentage out of it. But the fundamentals of the shape worked really well within the targets we set. You can obviously set targets which were even more extreme and do that. But it worked as a concept out of the bag immediately, which was really good. And I think that was because we had initially really good broad brush guidance from Richard Hill, our aerodynamicist, and then we were lucky we had access through our technical partner Williams to do lots of CFD runs as well. So we were able to very quickly develop that. So and everyone got it as well. Initially, some of my engineering colleagues were fighting back, saying, "Why don't you do more like a traditional Group C car, slab-sided? It's easier to do." Engineering-wise, and I said, well, the trouble with that is everyone's done a car like that for the road. We need to do something different, or we need to do something that's building on, trends that are out there. Well, hopefully it's been proved right. Everyone seems to think it's an intriguing concept. It technically works well, and people say it's a beautiful car as well, which is what was the intention.
Can I just jump in? From a sort of a design side of things,
it's not a bit difficult question, this is it.
When this project was kind of initially put to you as a designer receiving it, where it's an electric project as opposed to, obviously up until now, Lotus have traditionally been gasoline. Do you see that as an area of opportunity? Are there any particular areas where you found massive freedom that you wouldn't have had if it had a petrol engine? And do you think that is a massive benefit to the project as a whole?
I think the areas where it benefits is the powertrain package is more compact and more adaptable than it might be if it was a gasoline engine car. So once we were keen on doing this porosity, transparency, the passageways through the car, to not have to package a big lump of an 8 or 10 or 12 cylinder engine at the back of the car is a lot easier, and you can kind of position modules differently, so that's an advantage. And also for that kind of horsepower equivalent, the cooling that's required for it is less difficult to package than if you were doing a gasoline engine car. You know, we've got basically, very, very few radiators on the car. We got in the corners, we've got a couple horizontal, we've got one in the centre, and then we've got one at the base of the rear glass as well. And I'm assuming if we were, even 1,000 or 1,500 horsepower with a gasoline engine car, we'd be really struggling to package big radiators. They're always in the wrong place for you. So I think that opened up opportunities for us. I think when you start, and we've done a few electric cars before, so we're not green to this, but there's always this dream that because it's electric, you won't have to put any openings on the car at all. But from this project, with the type of battery systems we're using and cooling systems we're using for those batteries, we've still got radiators, so we still have to get reasonable size openings and airflow to it. So that didn't present itself as an opportunity, but it definitely gave us much more flexibility with the package.
Jimmy, you've got a question?
Yeah, from my perspective, technology innovation is actually really significant and driving, the whole industry, not just within the car industry, but obviously worldwide. But a lot of us probably on call have been very much more traditional raw car designs. So not putting technology, not leading the technology first, but having the raw ingredients of a well-designed, developed, balanced car. So from your perspective, is there a point where you go, too much technology is not a good thing for the characteristics of the car? Because a lot of people want to have a car that has soul, and too much technology sort of dumbs that down. So was that a sort of a consideration point around how much technology you put in the car? Keeping
really. Yeah, no, we did think about that in a number of areas. So, first of all, if you've seen me talk about the car before, I have said that one of the objectives was to make a car that was beautiful, first of all. And that sounds really obvious, but you're right. It can be sometimes you can be seduced by the technology or the extremity of the product to do something that is sci-fi, and completely outrageous. And typically those cars, and you see a lot of those being generated by startups from all kinds of crazy places around the world, they have a short shelf life. People get excited by it and they forget. So we wanted something which could be deemed beautiful, whatever that means. And I think part of that is you can recognise the volume of the car. It's got very good proportions to it. It looks hunkered down. It looks agile. All the things you'd expect a Lotus. And then as you walk around the exterior of it, you start to see the technology in terms of the aerodynamics, whether or not it's the porosity and the holes on the cars, or whether or not it's the carbon fibre wings and things like that. You see that. But yeah, and all through the car, we're thinking about the soul. You buy these types of products because you're after an experience. We obviously don't have the sight of a traditional engine through the glass back. We don't have the noise from that. But what we do have is we have a different kind of noise that's being generated by all the technical components that links to the performance. And when you look through the glass on the back of the car, you can see all the beautiful inboard suspension components, which are if you're into cars, even like me, you know, I'm not a technical mechanical guy, but I enjoy seeing all that. I can spend hours looking at a motorcycle, just looking at the design of the frame, the finishes, the suspension components, that they have a functional beauty to them, which I think is something which is true of Lotus racing cars, for example, in the 50s and 60s. You know, those beautifully elegant cars that were both form and function together. And then when we got inside the car, we were thinking about the soul and emotion. So, you know, the steering wheel reminds you of a race car and where the controls are placed. And some of the controls have got a very mechanical feel to them, like on a camera, there's a click, click, and they're metal. And we made the decision on this car not to have a touchscreen in the centre. We wanted to have a nice metal MMI control so you could interface with the instruments in front of you. And part of that was soul, but it's also something which is intuitive to use, because if you're driving at over 200 miles an hour, you possibly don't want to be doing that and then coming back to the wheel. So, or on a stiffly sprung car, you tend to be doing this while you're using a touchscreen. So the soul aspect is really important. These cars are all about emotion. They're not rational purchases. There are plenty of vehicles that do a large percentage of what you need to do in life, getting to and from places quickly and safely. You buy these because, you know, they send off senses in your brain, giving you joy, whether or not it's visual or motion or whatever it might be as well. So it has to be an emotional product.
No, I agree, and that's technology is fantastic, but it's also, you know, it can get over-engineered. So having that soul, something that people can look and see and feel and sound, makes a huge difference. So what you've done for me is a complete game changer in the industry, but also for yourself as a brand. So I've been very impressed.
Thank you. It's good.
Can I ask? I saw in an article some of the early shots on the Hethel circuit of the one of the three production cars.
Yeah.
Or the cars, and there, as a build on Jimmy's question, really, you know, there's currently no torque vectoring or traction control on those vehicles. Are you hearing that they are still relatively drivable at this stage, or is there and is it going to be refined into a road legal car for some countries? Because obviously America's not going to be there, or is it going to stay wild and travel?
It's
I love
wild.
wild.
And I'm not the person to ask this precisely. You need to talk to someone like Gavin Kershaw, you know, our development guru. But the idea is that you've got the modes on the car, which you can set at different levels, like any car. So you can have different levels of performance and, you know, kind of intervention to help you drive. Because we've got the four motors, you can drive the four wheels independently. So you've got the equivalent of torque vectoring. Mark might be able to say exactly where we are in that development phase of refining all that stuff.
So
for sure, I'm guessing that there's a bit more of a challenge when you've got nearly 2,000 horsepower than if you had, say, like the original Elise 120 horsepower. But
so the development work still, well, it was ongoing around the world up until shutdown. It's obviously taken a bit of a back step now. We'll be up and running with it all as soon as we can be. We have 3 pre-production prototypes out in the wild testing at the moment. And, you know, as with all these really exclusive limited number models, the car will be sold in America, for example, but it will be probably on show and display. But we have to go, each individual market that you take this car to is an individual conversation with the regulators and the legislators in that market, so as you guys know. So the car will be, Gav is spending a lot of time with the car. He's the overseer. He is our attributes director. So if it doesn't give him the right feeling in his bum, it doesn't leave the factory. He is Mr. Lotus when it comes to what a Lotus should feel like. He's been around. He was 16 years old when he walked through the factory gate straight out of school. He's won the GT4 championship. He's driven every single Lotus ever since then. So if he doesn't know what a Lotus should feel like on the ragged edge, then no one does. And from the conversations I've had with him, things are going absolutely in the right direction. We're still, there is still work to do, but that would be true of any project at this stage. So yeah, Gav's on it basically.
And we've worked, just out of interest, we've worked really closely with Gav all the way through this project. I've known Gav all the time I've been here. We were both relatively young then when we started, and on this project, we involved him very much when we were laying out the cockpit. There's sort of really fundamental basic packaging you can do to start with the technical guys who do that. But then Gav's input, as someone, as Mark said, who's driven GT4 race cars to championship success, and has also driven everything really from everybody else, all the other great and good manufacturers out there. His input is invaluable. What works, what doesn't work on other people's cars. Your point, what gives the car soul, what gives the car emotion, and he's got an aesthetic sensibility as well. So we're able to, I think we share a passion for cars basically, but also, doing something which is new, moves the game on as well. So a really good person to work with.
If I can ask a question from a female perspective, I'm all about emotion. I'm not a petrol head. I'm incredibly wild, and I have to connect to the car from a fashion point of view. When I turn up to 5-star hotels, I love when particularly men are running up to me. It's not they're running to me, they're running towards the car. So what am I to expect as someone that's never even been in a Lotus and I'm driving it and I turn up? What are some tips that I need to be looking out for? Apart from driving it very carefully.
Are you asking what tips to fend off male admirers, or
well, from a would you think any females would be purchasing into this unique there's only 130, correct, right?
Yeah, well, we've definitely shown globally. I've been to a few events. I've been to the ones in London, the ones in Dubai, and in west coast of America, and in amongst that there were partners of people who were buying the car but were interested for themselves, driving the car. But there were also a fair number of serious drivers as well, women who were driving McLarens and things and tracking them as well.
Right.
So I think it does have a broad appeal. I think it's fair to say everybody pretty much we've shown the car is interested in it. Its driving ability, its performance ability. Yeah. Some people more so than others. Some people, will want to use it very occasionally on the track, maybe just driving quickly on roads where we're allowed to. Other people will want to use it, more seriously on there. So that side's there. But yeah, people are obviously interested in all the other things it gives. Is it beautiful? Is it a car they can use every day? So we obviously thought about getting in and out of the car. The car is low, but the type of doors we've done, make it much easier getting in and out of the car. And of course, for you, when you arrive, when you want to fend off the hordes of men, the way the door opens up is a great red carpet moment that keeps people back as they majestically swing open the doors. But once you're inside, you've got good room.
Yep.
Between you and the passenger. You're not sitting, like in a racing car. We chose to make the seat move rather than the column. So some supercars these days decide to fix the seat and move the column. For us as designers, we thought that was great initially. The technical guys were more resistant to that. Because you don't necessarily get quite the easy finessing of driving position, but also you've then got to support a movable pedal box and column, which for them was a more complex, more weighty solution. But yeah, you can get yourself comfortable in there. We designed it around a variety of people from, someone, quite small through to not quite basketball players, but our CEO, Phil Popham's 6'4", so, it's a pretty good big spread of people, plus wearing crash helmets inside there. As a sort of fashion piece as well, we are offering basically a bespoking service for the car. So, you can choose it in a number of stock colours, but you can also ask for something very unique to you. And then inside, because the car is basically craftsman handmade, and it's hand trimmed, again, you can have a wide variety of finishes and patterns inside there. And all the metal parts, they can be interchanged between different material finishes and colours and things like that. And nice details like the badging. And we're not the first people to do this. We can't pretend to do this, but we've got some nice solutions around different levels of badging on the outside, where you can have something very standard, or you can have something with precious metals inside there and carbon fibre and all those sorts of things. So, I think there's something for everybody in there.
Russell, there's obviously being an internet-based journalist, where sometimes, and as a member of the Members Club as well, you were exposed to some of the less sophisticated debates around what is and isn't right for the brand. So Gracie will be angry with me asking this question, but would it be an exclusive for Men's Style Fashion to ask whether or not this £2 million also buys a cup holder, given that there's a beautifully designed, simple, lightweight cup holder in an Elise, but not one in an Evora?
I'm trying to think. We designed one for an Evora. I thought that was in production.
There is in the new GT410 Evora. There is a cup holder and armrests.
There's the debates that rage about whether to cup holder or not on a real Lotus.
Well, I've got a really good friend who I was at college with, who's been through multiple exciting cars: TVR Griffith, the Chips Skyline, a couple of 911s. But he came to Lotus and he phoned me up one day to say he was buying an Evora, and I thought, oh crikey, it's never going to stop ending the questions or problems now. Once he's got this and knows someone in the business. But he loved the car. He says it's the best car he's ever had. He's now sold it because he's got a Stratos recreation. But the one thing he did say is, he said, bloody irritating was not having a cup holder. He said, just because I occasionally do a track day doesn't mean to say I never drink a cup of coffee when I'm going on a business trip. So I think even in the most extreme drivers, people do still occasionally want to carry a water bottle or a coffee. So there is a solution that's been developed around a cup holder. I'm presuming it's going to go all the way through into production. We've certainly designed something. Whether or not it makes it all the way through, I don't know. But yes, there is one.
We're the first journalist to ask the question.
You are the first journalist on a 2,000 horsepower car. What's the most exciting question I can ask? But fortunately, as you're wearing a green and yellow T-shirt, I'll take it from you. So.
How much, in terms of things like cup holders, cubby holes, obviously it's a hypercar, but I know Gordon Murray is quite famous, particularly with McLaren F1, and I believe he's got a new hypercar coming out, which he's pushing quite heavily, the fact that it can be used for a drive to the south of France and things like that. It is a hypercar, but there will be storage for luggage, enough clothes for a weekend away. How is that something you put a lot of effort into? Is it something you have to really think about? Lotus are probably more of a track focused brand, but how much emphasis goes on things like that, and how much do you kind of worry and put effort into those?
If we look at cars other than this, and we're looking at the cars that we're developing beyond this, yeah, of course we're looking at all that sort of side, and we're benchmarking the obvious competitors and making sure we offer a compelling balance that allows people to use the car, but still gives it a unique character, keeps the soul of the car and the brand ethos. On this car, that level of usability wasn't one of the prime driving things. We have various storage places on the car. When you open the door, in the door opening between the door and the wheel envelope, there's a space where there's a fitted piece of luggage, one on either side, relatively small, but it's a small piece of luggage. We're also looking at soft luggage that can fit in the footwell and things like that as well. So there's a degree of usability on that type of car. Interesting talking to customers who buy these sorts of cars. There's a mixture of viewpoints on it. Some of them never think about that at all. Some of them say, "Well, I just send my luggage on in a separate car. This is for the driver." I'm not quite sure what the true need on it is. What I can say is on this car is it's very Lotus in it's an exquisite piece of packaging. Richard Rackham, who's one of our key concept guys, vehicle architects, he once made the comment that Lotus was like packing a pack of Pringles, and he did regret it afterwards. But the idea is that no bit of space is unused. So when you peel the skin off the Evija, underneath there's really no space between a mechanical part and the external surface, or between an air management duct, or there were these just two small portions where we've got the luggage on either side. And we really have just used every millimetre of space. So as a sort of statement of kind of efficiency of packaging, I think the car is something very special from that side. Which is important in terms of weight, keeping the car compact as well.
If I can ask one final question, Scott, you are such a Lotus fan. How do you feel, and you've driven many, hearing this interview, how do you feel, Because I'm all for vintage cars, and I love holding on to heritage, and I've driven all the electric cars, so to speak, and I'm like, you're stuck in a rock and a hard place. So listening to all of this, how...
Well, I couldn't, what resonates with me most is when Russell talks about designing as a package, and whether or not luggage is important, as much as it's not, of course it's not central to the design, but in order to get that engagement with a Lotus, that's what I felt with my Evora. I connected with that car, and I could flex in the way that I used it. If I had a spare £2 million, I might be in the running. But, I think you have hypercars are often pig ugly, but they cost so much and they go so fast. People tend not to necessarily say that. I think this is a beautiful car, and fingers crossed for when it gets out on the road. But it looks like an amazing piece of work by Lotus, and it's been a pleasure to spend some time chatting with you guys today.
You're welcome. Of course, what it is for us, that product as well, is it's a real stake in the ground about what we want to do going forward. It's stretched the company, it's stretched the team, and it helps then form a basis for the other products that we do afterwards. And of course, we will adapt to each individual market. There are different needs for different products and different segments. But I think it's really reminded us that what a Lotus should be. It should be challenging conventions and questioning everything. And, even more recently, the Elise did that when it came out. And then we spent a long time refining that. But, I hope that we are true to Lotus philosophy, but in a way that is relevant today. Different levels of traffic on the road, different environmental issues, different market expectations in terms of quality and powertrain source and all that sort of thing. So, it's always keeping that balance and moving the brand on as well.
Well,
great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so very much. And we're all looking forward to getting behind the wheel. Thomas, Scott, Jimmy.
I'm looking forward to my first ride in the car as well. I've seen a few other people enjoy it. So, hopefully Gav will take me out one day and show me what it can do.
Absolutely. That blows my mind. I've met a lot of engineers and where I've driven cars and we've not even been able to sit in it, and that just blows my mind. So you push for that.
I don't have to jump off. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bless you. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.